Welcome to Health Unfiltered. I'm known as the Professor, even though I'm not a medical professional. Today we're going to look at a video on by 5 doctors that talk about how to prevent and arrest the dreaded disease called dementia. I'm not a medical doctor, as I said, but I'm a clinical hypnotherapist. In my role as a clinical hypnotherapist, I will make comments as we go along, and I will summarize and give you my perspective of this dreaded disease and how to combat and fight it. Thank you. Listen along with me. Welcome.
Alzheimer's disease is a disease of middle age. The disease process actually starts in your 40s.
But the good news is 90% of Alzheimer's can be prevented.
That's correct.
World-leading neuroscientists, Drs. Dean and Ayesha Sherzai, dedicate their lives to combating the global dementia crisis. Using the latest science, they developed a plan that allows people to defy their genes and outsmart dementia.
Possible.
Dementia is a group of symptoms where cognitive elements become so poor where a person can no longer do their daily activities.
Can you dramatically reduce your risk of getting dementia?
Absolutely, yes.
That's
Steve
correct.
and I have created this acronym called Neuro and Nutrition. The type
Nutrition, very important and critical in health, all aspects of health.
of food that people choose directly impacts their brain health. It can prevent dementia.
Exercise.
Exercise awakens all the cells of the body and promotes their synchronization.
Leg exercises reduce the chance of dementia by more than 35%.
You unwind.
Relaxing, stress. Our definition of stress is anything incomplete. Stress can cause health issues.
People who have been stressed for a long period of time have smaller brains.
Shrinks your brain.
It shrinks the brain, and specifically the part of the brain which is responsible basically for memory.
Both your parents have dementia. Are you doomed to get it as well?
For a great majority of diseases, genes are not deterministic. How you interact with your world determines the outcome when it comes to brain health.
Correct.
Ayesha and Dean, thank you very much for joining me today.
It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having us, Jonathan.
It's wonderful.
So we have a tradition here at Zoe where we always start with a quick fire round of questions. And those questions come from our listeners, and we have these very strict rules. You can say yes or no, or if you absolutely have to, a one-sentence answer, but it is frowned upon. Are you willing to give it a go?
Of course.
Do it.
Of course.
All right. I'll start with Ayesha. If both your parents have dementia, are you doomed to get it as well?
No.
That's correct.
Can dementia be reversed?
No.
That's incorrect. It's better to say that we are not aware of possibility.
Can you dramatically reduce your risk of getting dementia?
Absolutely, yes.
That's correct.
Dean, are there foods that will reduce your risk of getting dementia?
Yes.
See, that wasn't too bad, was it? Finally, in a whole sentence, what's the most surprising thing that you've learned about preventing dementia?
The most surprising thing we learned was that 90% of Alzheimer's can potentially be avoided with 5 simple lifestyle changes.
Mm-hmm.
So this is only the second time that we've had a husband and wife duo on the show.
Oh.
And the first time was when I interviewed my wife. She's a dermatologist, so we were talking about skin health. And I can tell you I'm feeling a lot more relaxed today. So I found interviewing my wife was the most stressful episode I've ever done on the show by far.
Really?
Absolutely. Now, it went great.
And that's because of the emotional connection between the two.
But I'll be honest, I was really anxious about it, and what my happen afterwards if I sort of messed it up. So I'm actually in awe of the two of you being able to work all day with your spouse. And I understand that you actually connected in the first place over dementia.
We did, yes. The first conversation we had was about our grandfathers. They were both incredible people who did...
I'd like to say here that their current interest brought them together, and that's how the universe works.
wonderful things for their communities and for the society at large, and they were highly educated. And we were both privileged to have lived with them throughout our lives. So they weren't the type of grandparents who were away. They were there with us in our homes. And to see someone so intelligent and so capable slowly and gradually lose parts of themselves and their memory to the point where they can't remember the names of their grandchildren.
It's not unfortunate.
Can't do their very basic activities of life was devastating, and it was incredibly empowering as well. To see someone change like that, there was no other way we could have dedicated ourselves to anything else. So we both went into the field with the promise that we were going to find a treatment for it and understand how this magnificent brain of ours functions.
Again, difficulty in our lives force us to look for options and solutions, and so the universe sometimes calls us into new discovery by burdening us with the issues that we're called upon to find the solutions for. And while we think we're unfortunate when they first arise, we find that the result made it all important and necessary.
Remember, this is 20 years ago, and we met while doing service. I had just finished my work at NIH, a National Institute of Health, and had gone back to Afghanistan with World Bank to help rebuild the country. Ayesha had gone back with Doctors Without Borders. It was an expat party in a post-conflict world, difficult life that we had seen, and we sat next to each other, and that's where it started 21 years ago.
21, yeah.
It's a really beautiful story, and it's nice also to think that there could be nice things that come out of dementia. Regular listeners of the show will have heard me talk about this in the past on other podcasts talking about dementia, but my grandmother got Alzheimer's, and she got it really quite young, and I think the experience I had is not only was this is a horrible thing to observe in someone that you love, but also it had a really profound impact on my father, and I think that he's really spent the rest of his life in terror of the idea that this will happen to him, and he's in fact significantly older than his mother was when she got Alzheimer's. But
and fear can bring on dreaded diseases, because fear is an energy, and energy does work.
It's really shaped in this fear of the impact on his brain, and then how you come across everyone. It's a horrible disease, and it does have this impact sort of across the family, which is one of the things I think that's particularly striking. So I'm always really pleased when we talk about it. I think it's really important, and I love that I think today, with these answers you've already talked about, they're profoundly different from what my father has always believed, which is that there's nothing he can do about it.
Right.
It's entirely down to the genes, and he doesn't know whether or not he's got these genes that his mother has, and if he does, there's nothing he can do. And I think you've already said, well, that isn't really true.
That's very true, yes.
Absolutely.
That's unfortunate.
Before we get into that, could you remind us, what is dementia and Alzheimer's before we start to talk more about, why it happens?
So dementia is the umbrella category. It's a group of symptoms where cognitive decline, whether it's memory or other cognitive elements, become so poor where a person can no longer do their daily activities. They're having difficulty driving, if they were driving before. If they were having difficulty cooking, if they were cooking before. If they were having difficulty with their finances and things of that nature. And it's a protracted period. Remember, if there's a short period of loss of consciousness, that's delirium, that can get better. This is protracted. That's a big category. Now, under that are many diseases that cause dementia. Alzheimer's is the biggest category. Alzheimer's constitutes about 60 to 70% of all dementias. And it has a particular pathway, particular symptoms, and we can talk about that. Mm-hmm. We have Lewy body dementia. We have frontotemporal lobe dementia. We have vascular dementia. We have Parkinson's dementia. We have Huntington's dementia. We have metabolic disorders. And then there are reversible kinds of dementia.
Right, extraordinary, isn't it?
Depression and anxiety, where the depression and anxiety has gotten so bad that the person's life is affected now. Those can be treated. Metabolic disorders can be treated. But things like Alzheimer's, where even though some people are making those claims, which is incredibly irresponsible, because we've done the pathology, we've seen what the people go through by the time the disease manifests, those are not, at this point, reversible. But
That's where I like that he has qualified that at this point to the knowledge, it's not reversible. He's not closing the window on options and possibilities, as his wife did earlier in the video.
But the good news is, even prior to that dementia state, which is called MCI, mild cognitive impairment, so much can be done to prevent the progression.
I'd like to go back to
Correct.
this thing I just raised about, my father worrying that this dementia is in his genes. Is that true?
Everything we do, everything we are, is genetically influenced.
That's correct.
Even, I just drove from from Redondo Beach to LA. My driving is notorious. Even my son, a teenager, says, that's the way. And it's because of attention and all these other things. Even those have genetic components, right? These little micro behaviors that are. But genes manifest in different degrees for different conditions. Huntington's disease is 100% penetrant gene disorder. It means that if you have this gene, you're going to get the disease no matter what. There's nothing you can do about it. In Huntington's disease, there's a
That's just an opinion, isn't it?
chromosome 4 abnormality. And we even in their 20s, even in childhood, if we see that, we know they're going to get it in their 30s and 40s. But for a great majority of diseases, genes are not deterministic to that extent. Genes affect risk. Genes play around or interplay with environment.
That's correct.
Interplay with lifestyle.
That's
But
correct.
they're not the determinant. And that's the case for Alzheimer's.
Brilliantly said.
In Alzheimer's, which is the big category of dementia, the percentage of Alzheimer's that's determined by 100% penetrant genes, meaning by genes that are absolute. That means that if you have these genes, you're going to get Alzheimer's at an early age no matter what, is only 3%.
3%.
3%.
Interesting.
The rest of it is genetically influenced, but the genes have to do with lifestyle. Genes are profoundly affected by lifestyle.
Correct.
And environment.
And
that's what we need to kind of highlight. And that's what we need to tell people, that it's that effect, that interplay of how you interact with your world that really determines the outcome, not as much as genes when it comes to Alzheimer's and many of the other diseases of aging when it comes to brain health.
Well said.
So are you
Well
saying
said.
sort of
Well said.
97% of people, like, if they could somehow have the perfect lifestyle, they would not end up getting Alzheimer's?
So we have to be careful. In our book, we said that 90% of Alzheimer's can be potentially prevented. We live in an age where people are playing around with numbers, and we have to be very careful with science. So there's no direct evidence of that. Direct evidence says 60%. Pretty much direct evidence. 60%.
Yes.
But we say that if you have optimal lifestyle elements, which we'll talk about, as much as 90% can be prevented.
Got it. But you're saying even now, like, there's clear data that 60% could be prevented,
Absolutely.
and your view is if you really took it to the extreme, you could actually get down to only 1 in 10 of the people who were going to get it would actually end up getting it.
Exactly.
So that's a very positive story.
Incredible.
Yes.
Incredible.
Thank you for watching this video with me. I want to give you my perspective as a clinical hypnotherapist on what the doctors have offered. There is an aspect to disease that is not commonly referred to or discussed in our Western civilizations, and that's the effect on the emotions, on the physical body. Emotions are energy that flows naturally and freely and consistently as long as they are in place. And emotions, energy does work. So when emotions are unresolved from stresses, emotions from trauma, from childhood issues, whether they are suppressed or we're aware of them, whether they're present or hidden in the past, unearthed or earthed, or buried, I would say, they still exist and they still do work, maybe most times unknown to us, against us. And when they are unresolved emotions, they cause death to the cells of the body and erode our health conditions over time. And so hypnotherapy allows us to address the cause of difficulties, the cause of disease, of dysfunction in the body. And what it has unearthed is that these unresolved emotions build up in energy such that it's unbearable for aspects of our spirit that are with us at birth, that come to give us functionality in our lives, in various areas of our lives, that go, just like our body is made up of many cells that do work, and many parts that have their own functions. Our spirit, which came to us, it gives us life. When it exits the body, our body dies. It has parts that give function to parts of our body. And when the negative emotions and the energy from the negative emotions build up in intensity to the point where these aspects are no longer comfortable or able to function in their role, they exit the human body, and the absence begins to cause the onset of dreaded diseases as dementia. And so when one begins to address negative emotions and unearth those and resolve that, the energy now that flows through the body is an energy of resolution, it's health, that adds to the health of one's body. So a disease that's dreaded can be reversed if it's associated with a negative emotion or negative emotions that are arrested and addressed and healed. And when that is done, the spirit aspects can return and bring back function to the body and restore one to health. This is our perspective from a clinical hypnotherapy perspective, something that medical doctors have not launched or delved into and are unaware of it. And there are many stories and examples of people who have experienced reversal of dreaded diseases through this type of therapy. I hope that you enjoyed my perspective, you enjoyed the video tonight. Thank you for viewing with us Health Unfiltered, and we look forward to seeing you again in our next video. All the best. Thank you.